We don't have to work more to get what we want.
You can't outwork your thought habits. I'm a lot. I'm just a lot. I think very few people talk about the loss that comes when you grow.
She had this realization that things are always going to be changing.
I see you.
Amy, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm really excited to have you here today. I know that you're a habit finder coach, and I'm really curious to understand what led you to that path. But something that I wanted to start off the conversation with was I read a quote from your book, I See You, that states, "We don't have to work more to get what we want." So I have two questions. The first question is, why is it that people believe that we have to work hard to get what we want? And the second is, what did you find when you arrived at the conclusion that this is true?
Yes. Thank you for having me. And I think I want to always start this particular conversation with a reminder of who I wrote the book for. Because this book was not written for someone who's just at the beginning of their career or just starting out. This is sort of written for the person who she has built something, she's climbed the ladder quite a ways, she's gotten to a certain point, like a threshold of either revenue or title or level of influence or impact. And she's gotten there by working hard, right? The work ethic is not the problem, but she wants to go somewhere else and recognizes, ooh, I'm standing here and I know that working harder isn't really going to make that much of a difference.
I
The
see.
answer to what I need to get to the next place is not hard work. Because sometimes I feel like people take the message of the book out of context and they will say, "Oh, you never have to work hard," or and I'm, well, you've got to dig some ditches.
Right.
But there is a point in the process where you look around and say, I know the answer to the thing I want next is not just working more hours, either because you physically can't. If you do, you're going to get sick or harm yourself, right, by continuing to work at a certain pace, or it's just not going to make a difference. That's not what's missing at this point.
Right.
So,
Right.
yes. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you the story of when I ran into that myself.
Yes,
If,
please do.
okay, because it's a kind of a good story.
Go ahead.
I was, oh my gosh. Okay. I had built a business in sales. I was leading a team of about 1,000 people across the country and sort of at the mountaintop in this particular field. Very well known in this very small world, right? But I was sort of at the top of that world. And from the outside, you would have thought, oh, she's got it all together. She's leading the pack here. True. But my husband and I had our annual meeting with our financial advisor. And so she had sent me all these forms to fill out with where you are financially in all these different areas, what your goals are for the future. At that time, our kids were, I'll call it the Uber era of parenting. Everybody was in things, nobody drove. So it's just a really intense parenting season, a lot of kid stuff happening. So we go to this meeting and I remember so much about it. I remember the sound of the air conditioning running in the background of the office. I remember the color of the chairs we were sitting on and how they felt. And I remember that Tess said to me, "So I've reviewed all of the forms you filled out, and everything looks great. You're not overspending, you don't have debt outside of your house. You're managing what you have well. There's just one problem if you want to achieve the goals you have set for yourselves, including paying for our three kids to go to college, retiring at this age, whatever, all these things that I had written down." And she leaned forward on this stack of papers and she said, "You're not making enough money." And I remember like for the rest of the meeting, I don't know what she said. I don't know. It was just like, because immediately my head just started like spinning because I'm looking around and I'm thinking, okay, my husband's sitting next to me. He's in education and should be. the only way he's making more is by getting older. So he's out.
Right, right.
Unfortunately, there's no one else in the room. So it's just me. And I'm thinking, I'm not willing to miss the games, the stuff that's happening in our house after work. I'm already working very full-time hours, and this is on me. And I knew also I'm not giving up on those goals. I could have just said, okay, well, let's just change the goals. But for some reason in me, there was this very like decision, very grounded decision. I will not change the goals. And so it led me to this deep kind of unraveling of I can't outwork this. I can't
Mhm.
work anymore. There aren't any more hours. I don't have enough energy, and I'm not sacrificing the people who are most important to me for this. So that's what kind of led to this whole unraveling, and then also the core message of the book, which is you can't outwork your thought habits.
Right. So, what was true about the thoughts habit that you had at the time that would
Mhm.
actually be what needed to change in order for you
Mhm.
to, yeah, arrive at actually reaching your goals and doing what it is that you wanted to do without having to work any harder?
Mhm. Well, I think that was the first thing I had to surrender was the belief that it was just hard work that was going to
Mm.
get me to the more money.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
that
I guess that, yeah, that makes sense.
it rammed right into it. It was like, I can't work anymore. I knew that with all of my heart and soul.
Yeah.
I was maxed out, right? I also knew okay, something needs to change. And then it led me to deeper, someone needs to change, which led me to a lot of deep exploration inside of me and deep coaching work that led me to eventually starting the company that I started 9 years ago, which is called Amy Kemp Inc., and doing the work that I'm doing now. But along the way, I had to shed a lot of things that were attached to a feeling of identity. I had to shed what people were going to think about my decision to transition into something different or to start something new. I had to shed it wasn't embarrassment, but it was sort of like shame that I had kind of reached the top of the mountain, but still wasn't making enough money. I
Mm.
just had to like let go of what anyone else thought about that. And I just had to make different decisions and let go of what everyone thought about those decisions.
Yeah,
There was just a
absolutely.
lot of surrendering and a lot of it had to get very quiet for a bit. I didn't talk to a lot of people about it, only a few trusted coaches and people that were not attached to the decisions that I was making.
Right.
Because even for my husband, I mean, he's awesome, but he was like, "What? We're going to change what? This is
Yeah.
how we pay our bills." It was scary for him too. And so walking through that transition required a level of going deeper within me, not working harder.
Right. So you went from running this sales business and
Mhm.
starting Amy Inc. So what is it that Amy Inc. is that isn't sales, or what is it?
Yes, good question. So the company I run now, Amy Kemp Inc., is me working with this assessment tool called the Habit Finder. So
Mm,
it is an assessment tool that measures your subconscious habits of thinking. It
mm,
tells you what's going on below the surface. And it has both an assessment tool and a curriculum that I use in one-on-one engagements and then small groups of women that I walk through this curriculum with them on changing the subconscious habits of thinking that are holding them back or creating resistance in their creative process, whether they're creating a business or a career or a family or a relationship or whatever they want to create. So the work I do is done now with women across the country.
mm.
They're all over the place, but definitely I'm holding space for a high capacity woman who has reached that point, that threshold of I want something different, but I can't outwork it. This
Right.
is one that hard work is, it's not going to work anymore. It's not going to get me what I want.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so interesting. And I also wonder, because you're saying that you're coaching people across the country, especially women, because you were introductory talking about how there's a specific group of women that you're kind of
Okay.
tailoring to.
I'll tell you my person because she is kind of unique, the person
Okay.
that I work with. And this is something super important. I think it's been a really cool journey even over the last few months. I have come to such a deep level of ownership and clarity around this. So my ideal client, I'll tell you about her. She typically gets more done in 4 hours than most people do in eight. She has some sort of big title, advanced degree, or she's leading some sort of organization, or she's built something from the ground up. Or even I had a client who she had 8 kids. Well, that's big to
Right.
run a household with 8 children. But that would be a descriptor I would use. She also has been often told she's too much,
Mm.
tone it down. She's even learned to, in social settings, gauge how much of her she can bring
Yeah.
because it's a lot for people to experience the fullness of her excellence and like what she does can make people feel uncomfortable because it's so much compared to what most people have accomplished. She either creates or has the capacity to create a great deal of wealth. And so she's constantly dealing with that and what that means and what power that brings, but also, am I worthy of that? There was a mom, I'll start with she was like VP of a major healthcare system, but a client of mine who, when we were talking about her kids, was going to be on a new travel team. And she was saying, I need to know the parents because I'm going to need help with rides. And she's a single parent. I'm going to need help with rides to and from things. There will be times where I'm not available. I have this very big career. But when people asked her what she did, because she needed the relational connection, she just said, oh, I work for this hospital. Because saying what she actually does would not help her form a strong relationship, it would be a hindrance.
Okay. Wow. A lot of interesting factors here, and almost like very specific group
It's
too.
very specific. Yeah. Oh, wait, the last one. This is
Yeah,
the
go for
last
it.
characteristic. When I go through the description of this person, almost to a person, she'll think, I think that's me, but I'm not totally sure.
I mean, okay, that's funny that you said because as you were talking about this list, of course, when you're beginning, like I'm really young. I don't have a big business and a big corporation or anything like of an accomplishment in that sense. But when it comes to more like characteristic stuff, such as feeling like I'm too much, and I've always had this feeling, especially from a young age, when it was like more one-on-ones, I was really good with women. But if it was groups of girls, I really struggled with girl groups. I've always gravitated towards hanging out with boys or men the older I grew. And what that also led to was as if there was even more friction in these relationships, especially when I was younger.
In male ecosystems, the things that you're probably naturally good at or want to talk about are
Yeah.
celebrated.
Yeah. Amongst men for
And
sure.
so
Yeah.
that's I'll often at a barbecue or wherever socially find myself talking with the men as well because I'm interested in what they're talking about more. And also, women have been culturally conditioned to stay small to survive.
That's actually the what I was gonna ask you about earlier, because I was
Yeah.
wondering, is there like is there something that's incredibly clear generationally with a certain group of particular women? Because you were talking about something in the lines of be seen and not heard. That's a generation in itself. And where a lot of that limiting beliefs is coming from, I suppose, is also from that generation. I wonder if you've noticed very particular shifts in mindset along the generations.
I mean, there are still parts of our world today where a woman survives by being agreeable and by finding someone who will take care of her, right, for the rest
Right.
of her life. And in many cases, that's true still.
Yeah.
So generationally, it's so baked into so much of the messaging around women and power and whether it's okay to be a lot. I'm a lot. I'm just a lot. I was
I love
made
how you
that way.
say it.
One of my clients, we call it shiny squintyitis. It's like I shine so brightly, I make you squint. But it's
Mm.
not because I'm doing it so that you feel uncomfortable. I'm just living my life. I'm curious about a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. I want to do a lot of things. I make a lot of things happen. I create a lot of things, right? That's a lot for some people.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you learn, ooh, people have a reaction to me when I bring the fullness of me. There aren't a lot of places where I can bring the fullness of me without sort of tampering it or hiding parts of it. And those are the people that I serve. And what do you do when you shine so brightly? It makes people squint.
Oh my God, I feel so touched in so many ways, or triggered, if you will, because I don't know, are you familiar with the law of Yonte? It's a Scandinavian concept. Are you familiar with it at all?
Oh,
I'm
no.
okay. So in Scandinavia, we had this underlying value that is known as the law of Yonte. It was created to humble people, and it was also as a part of a socialist community. And it sounds like this. It's 10 rules. The first is you're not to think you're anything special. You're not to think you're as good as we are. You're not to think you're smarter than we are. You're not to imagine yourself better than we are. You're not to think you know more than we do. You're not to think you are more important than we are. You're not to think you're good at anything. You're not to laugh at us, and you're not to think anyone cares about you, and you are not to think that you can teach us anything. So, mind you, imagine being like a big energy girl with so many thoughts and so many feelings and so many ideas, and really wanting to have this platform of expression and growing up with all of those fundamental values. So it's been such an interesting journey for me to grow up knowing that you won't get the support from the society that you want. And then I moved to the US, and I came to the US where I was talking about all of these dreams and ideas that I had and everything I wanted to talk about and share, and to have, yeah, a platform where we can just share all of our ideas. And all of a sudden it's celebrated, and it's like the American dream, and you can do whatever you want. And everyone around you is all of a sudden incredibly supportive of the idea of you doing what it is that you want to do, whatever it might be. It was such a twist in my mind. And it was also so interesting to come back then to Norway and recognize that everything I've ever believed was thoughts and patterns from generations prior. So that limiting belief that I had about the fact that I could not accomplish what I wanted to do, or that it was wrong of me to do so because all of a sudden I'm more special, or I think that I know better, or that I am trying to teach people, when in reality what I wanted to do was to share and to be authentically who I am without having to put a lid on it. I don't think a lot of people know this about Scandinavians, and it's something that we kind of claim to be out of, but it's still very much there. Because whenever someone is very successful in Norway, it really has to be a good reason for them to be successful for us to think it's okay. But even then, even if you're the world's greatest soccer player in the spirit of the World Cup,
I
I
mean,
mean,
yes, go Norway. What a game was it? What a match. It was so great.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Insane. But yeah, even then, you're under scrutiny. You have to show up in a very, you have to be a very good person for the people to accept you for being a multi-billionaire or millionaire or whatever you want. And
I
yeah.
should note, while I do think many American belief systems will give you more freedom, this is also very baked into people living in the United States. I wouldn't say that a lot of people who live in the United States live within those same bars,
Mhm.
within their communities,
Mhm.
their religious world, their family structure, their neighborhood. So it may be more not like a general national belief system. As
Mhm.
you were saying each one, I envision bars on a prison cell. It's
Yeah,
just like stay
yeah,
in this box,
yeah. You're
stay in
just
this box.
exact, and that's exactly what it feels like too, because I am still struggling with, or let me put it like this, I am still expanding myself to be comfortable with people looking at me in
Yeah.
any way. Because what I have done in my podcast, maybe up until this point, is that I've tried to please everyone because God forbid someone looks at me with the wrong eye. Or just because
Yeah.
I've struggled with that, the feeling of being misunderstood, because I think maybe it's just the innate nature that women are very defensive. Maybe it's just me who are defensive.
It feels unsafe, right? Because you're going to
Yes,
be attacked for it when you stand in that power, that ownership of it. And you will, it's not if, it's you will be misunderstood if you
right.
create things.
The moment you become visible, and some of these things are like things that I'm actively praying over because I need to become comfortable with having the like eyes on me if I want to be successful, if I wanted to see it grow. I need to recognize that just because someone disagrees with me doesn't mean that my entire world is going to collapse. it's uh,
Ah,
it's so in the spirit of thought habits and thought processes and stuff. How do
yeah.
you begin the process of helping people kind of identify where their patterns are actually coming from and what kind of small shifts they can do in order to derive different results than what they already have, simply because their mind is, the way they're thinking currently is tricking them into kind of a stagnation.
Yeah. So, first of all, even the law of Yante that you were describing, all of those belief systems were put into place because they helped a group of people survive. So I'm very cautious. I never want to be judgmental about a habit of thinking, even if it's a collective one or a cultural one. The problem is when you employ a survival mechanism past the point of needing, it becomes detrimental and damaging. So even if you think about that as an example for a nation or a group of people who live in a certain area of the world, right? At some point, they probably needed that to survive. The problem is the world has changed. It's a different place. We aren't hunting for our food and being attacked by enemies. That's not necessarily true, but we have different dangers than we used to.
It's true. Do you have any examples of what those dangers looks like today and what they might have looked like before?
Mhm. Well, I'll give you some examples of habits of thinking that might help you up to a certain point, and
Hmm.
then they become detrimental and damaging. I'll share an example of a client who grew up in a setting where they didn't have enough food legitimately, and she said when she got out of that situation, I won't ever feel the feeling of hunger again. Just sort of made a decision. It was like a survival decision. The problem is, it led to her becoming really unhealthy, where she was having serious health issues. This survival mechanism of not feeling hunger led to when she didn't need that anymore and she was continuing to employ, it led to the point where she was going to have some serious interventions done if she didn't make some changes
Right.
health wise. So, all of our subconscious habits of thinking, we are hardwired to survive. And so, these habits of thinking, we create them because when we follow a pattern in our brain and it's beneficial, our brain puts a groove there so it takes less energy. So, what I would say to someone who wants to discover what's happening below the surface in your deeper mind, that place that we don't really pay attention to, but that drives so much of our behavior, the subconscious, is really to take the habit finder assessment. The tool is designed to measure these habits of thinking and it is free to take. So you can go to amykemp.com and just take it and you get your results right away. It shows you your habits of thinking and connecting with people in the area of physical creation, which is work. So, what are the habits of thinking that show up when you're trying to get work done? In structure is like, what are the habits of thinking that show up when you are following processes or procedures or systems? And do you rebel or resist those structures that may be beneficial to you? Another area is called mental creation. These are the habits of thinking that show up when you're dreaming about the future or setting goals or thinking long term about plans for the future. And it will show you here are the habits that show up in resistance to you doing that.
Mm.
So a lot of it is being able to have language to describe these habits of thinking that are creating resistance that you aren't even aware of. It's just
Right.
happening below the surface. And that's where that's the core message. That's what we're going back to the very beginning, but it's like I had reached a place where I couldn't outwork the resistance of these habits of thinking that were driving everything. And I had to acknowledge that and then just say, what's happening? Really examine it and decide, I'm going to learn to think differently. I'm going to consciously choose different thoughts and create new groups in my brain.
Wow. I mean,
Mhm.
it's really interesting because I think what a lot of us are finding in this process of, yes, self-realizations, or maybe we've been pushed to a situation because of a big trauma that happened or something terrible that happened in our life, and all of a sudden we're forced to make different decisions. It's as if our entire nervous system is going through a complete crisis of turmoil that is almost impossible to regulate. And in the process of not being able to control that, we learn to control it essentially. And this will vary from person to person, like how long does it take to actually regulate, and how do we, and what do we even learn from the process of doing so? Are we sitting with it, letting it actually shape it? Or are we indulging in something to cover over the discomfort of it all? Because a lot of us, when we're going through something incredibly painful, and we haven't necessarily learned how to sit with that and how to cope with that, it's really easy to find ourselves into alcohol or drugs or food or whatever it is that might feel comforting. And
Yeah.
I wonder,
You just escape. That's
yeah,
all of
escapism.
those are just, they're just forms of escape and coping. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I, there's something to be said about even recognizing that's what we're doing in those moments, because like you said, a lot of these things are happening under the surface and we're not even aware that
Yep.
it's happening. And what is it that you find that your clients are struggling with the absolute most when it comes to dealing with these processes? Because yeah, of
Mhm.
whatever pain that surfaces and the struggles
Yeah.
that they have in order to create a different reality for themselves.
Yeah. I want to add that we don't see ourselves very clearly.
That's funny.
We are designed to live in relationship with other people and with in community. We also do not really sustain any kind of long-term change alone.
Mm,
We require a relationship. That's a part of the change mechanism built into human beings. We're interconnected. I have a lot of concerns around AI and how people are using it in this way because AI gives you the illusion that it sees you. It
mhm,
feels like it sees you because it's so affirming. What it doesn't do is challenge the parts of you that a human being can intuitively feel and experience. But I'm hearing a lot of people sort of using AI as a false feeling of being seen and understood. They're
mhm,
so craving that real community. Uh, I believe this kind of change that we're talking about happens very slowly, very incrementally, and in the context of a one on one or a group setting where you have accountability for these changes.
mhm.
I've not seen anyone successfully achieve it alone.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that I don't know if that's because you're working particularly with women, so I think it's safe to kind of put it under that umbrella a little bit. That as a woman, I know that a lot of the healing that I encounter, I can feel a lot of feelings. I can wake up one day and I can feel a lot of feelings, and it's kind of weighing on me. And then I can kind of look around and be like, do I have any reasons to be feeling this way? What day on my cycle am I? It's as if I'm trying to identify and I need a reason for why I feel the way that I feel. And what I find to be incredibly helpful, I could, just an example from last week is when I had that and I woke up and I just talked to my sister-in-law because the both of us had the day off and we're living together. And I was like, can I just talk to you about what's on my mind? I just feel a little bit heavy. She's like, yeah, go for it. And we're just eating breakfast and drinking coffee out on the balcony. And I'm just kind of effectively untangling all the thoughts. And in the process of it coming out of my mouth and out of my body, if you will, I can feel it sort itself out. It's as if the talking itself is therapeutic and is what is actually a part of it. And I know that it's probably true for a lot of women. And I know, at least for a lot of women that I know. And I know that I could have essentially practically sat in my room and said everything out loud to myself, but it doesn't have the same effect as when you're sharing it with another individual, even if they're not giving you a ton of advice back. It's something about that interaction that is happening with two. It's as if it's an energetic interaction, I
It
feel.
is. I think it's a spiritual interaction.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. What?
It's energy, spirit. It's the realm that no one wants to talk about, but we're spiritual beings, right?
Right, yeah.
Are more than just data and thoughts. I mean, we do have a spirit, and I do believe that's true. It is different. And that's the difference too, where I'm seeing that with AI, where I think you can get an answer that is good. AI will say, especially if you tell it who to be, it will say the right words, but it doesn't have this spiritual exchange or the energetic, if that feels more comfortable to you, exchange that connection with a real human being has.
Yeah.
I'll also say for a lot of my clients, they're in charge, and there aren't a lot of spaces where they can be fully honest because it's inappropriate for them to share that when they're in charge or so many people depend on them. And that gets to be a really small circle of people where
Hmm.
you can really be fully honest. But I have grave concerns, deep concerns for any leader who doesn't have a space where she can be fully honest. And if someone were listening and that resonates with you, I don't have that space. I don't care how much you have to pay. I don't care how you do it or who it is, but you have got to find a place. You've got to create a place where you can be fully transparent with someone about every hard thing. And it has to be someone who's neutral and unattached to the outcomes. It can't be someone in your place of work. It can't be your spouse always, because, like I said,
Right.
even I have a great husband. He was so attached, but you've got to have a place where you can just be fully honest. One more thing about that I'll tell you, the title of my book is called I See You. And the publishers originally did not want me to name the book that. They wanted the book to be more about me, but the book isn't about me. I really did write it for someone, not
Mm.
about something. And the title came, oh my gosh, I was at a community event. I met this woman. She's very well known in our community. She has a very big job title. She sits at tables where decisions are made that impact thousands of people. Met her very briefly and really enjoyed our conversation. I reached out to her and just said, I'd love to have a cup of coffee. And
Mm.
so we met, and I just listened to her story. I just asked a bunch of questions I wanted to know about her. About 55 minutes in, she interrupted me and she said to me, "Why did you invite me to coffee today?" Skeptically, a little bit brusquely. And I said, the first thing that came to my mind, I just said, because I see you.
Mm.
And she put her head in her hands and just wept.
Oh, really?
And I just sort of let her, and it was a long time. It's sort of awkward. And then she sat up and she wiped her face off and she sort of collected herself and she said, "Thank you. So few people do." And that's the person I wrote it for. Everyone sees her, but
Mm.
no one sees her.
Yeah, it's something to be said about someone who's always in the spotlight and someone who knows a lot and a lot of people look up to, but to what extent are they seen on a human individual level and not where they're put on a pedestal for what they know or what they bring? That's
Right.
really interesting. And it's also something to say about everybody needs someone. Everybody needs to be seen, and everybody
Yeah.
needs the liberty of being authentically who they are.
But imagine the resistance I come up against when I'm working with the kind of person I work with, because for her, that hasn't been safe. When people
Right.
have fully seen her, she's gotten negative feedback that she's too much, that she needs to, And so, and even then, I lead a once a year, I take 20 of my clients to a city for a long weekend. We call it refresh. There's no
Nice.
agenda. We don't have any training. The sole purpose is to be with people who are like you.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
But when I tell you the pictures look great and it looks like everyone is so comfortable, it is very difficult for my clients to come.
Mm.
That space for them has not been safe. And so I'm sort of doing like exposure therapy. I'm
Right.
exposing them to this space but it's a curated space with people who are like them, where they can be fully themselves. This year we went to Savannah and I was sitting at this dinner. I just for a moment was listening to the conversations happening around me. This one's taking a class at Harvard just for fun. This one decided to design her own dress for this event because she thought it would be fun. This one's thinking about starting a new nonprofit in her spare time, of which she has none, but she'll do it. Like
Right.
this one's talking about this, what she's doing with AI and building this whole back end for her business. And I'm listening to them talk to each other, and they're able to bring the fullness of that to this space. But
Mm.
it's very much it's scary for them to step into that and then to really be themselves. But that's really that's what I do. That's what I'm here for, is to see those people and to put them in spaces where they're seen also.
Got you.
Yeah.
What is
Mhm.
the typical demographic of the women that you're helping?
Typically between, I'd say like mid 30s, maybe 30 to 65,
Mm.
probably. And that's a pretty broad range, but they're not just starting out, as I said,
Right.
but they're also not.
Are they also like all over with all sorts of different backgrounds, ethnicities, etc.? Or is it like
Yeah.
typical, your American sweetheart?
No, they're all over, and their professions are also different.
Mm.
Government, healthcare, nonprofit, small business, franchise, corporate America, they work in different settings. The characteristics that set them apart are more what I described earlier than those outward
Right.
characteristics, but they're more about how they move through the world. They tend to be really interested in music or art or theater, or they'll get into things also.
Hmm.
Maybe they'll find something they really enjoy and then they'll do a deep dive on this thing that they enjoy, or they're just very curious and they're learners. They want to continue to grow. They're ambitious in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to any woman out there who feel like they are the too much, they've heard that they're too much, they've felt that they've too much, they feel guilty for being too much, they've tried to minimize themselves to fit a space in which that the other people around them are comfortable. What do you want to say to that woman in order to take up the space that she so desperately feels like she needs, but also deserves
Yeah.
to be in? What would you tell that woman?
So, one of my favorite quotes is from the book The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And it says, "You are rare, and there is value in all rarity. Therefore, you are valuable."
Mm.
And diamonds are valuable because there aren't a lot of them. There just aren't a lot of you. That's what I would say to her. There aren't a lot of you. That's what makes you valuable. That is the actual best part of you. That being said, it doesn't excuse you from the community and relational connection that you need. It's
Right.
just going to take a little more effort for you to find it and to create it than it will for most people. But don't stop in the pursuit of that. That's what I would say.
That is such
Recognize
a good
that your
point.
rareness is valuable, but also not an excuse for just being isolated and alone.
Something that I found was what I had to let go of was a lot of comfort in terms of the community that I grew up with, the people that I grew up with, what was familiar to me. I remember the first thing I did was after high school, I just decided to go to a school across the city because I was like, I just need a change of scene. This space isn't like holding, I could physically feel trapped. and I
Oh,
needed to dive outwards. And unfortunately, that didn't really help. It wasn't until I came to the US when I, for the first time in my life, experienced that sense of belonging. And then it occurred to me that, well, wherever you go, there you are. It's kind of this, if I'm also bringing with me that version of me that has still all that impact from being like caged, if you will, and having to also sit in the discomfort of letting go of a lot of familiarity, letting go of people that's always been around, and being okay that certain endings just had to happen. It didn't mean that it was even awful. It doesn't mean that you were bad for it. It doesn't mean that things were like you need to justify it in any way, shape, or form. It was just over. And I wonder, because it's really uncomfortable. I don't know if you've heard this saying, walking away from a familiar hell into an unfamiliar heaven.
oh,
It's so easy to stay stuck in familiarity because the unknown is incredibly uncomfortable to approach when it's in fact unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. And I don't know that a lot of people deal well with unpredictability. Personally, I really struggle with unpredictability. So there's also something to be said about, we also attract when we're in that mindset of I'm too much, or we're surrounding ourselves with people that support that narrative, then that's going to consistently be true until we break out of that space. We
right.
need something to change in order to arrive. I can take up space here because I'm not being diminished or dimmed because my
Yeah,
wholeness
but no
isn't.
one, but very few people talk about what you're describing, which is the loss that comes when you grow.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you think about in most construction projects, before the building happens, something is torn down. There's a loss. I lost so many relationships in
mm-hmm.
my life through that transition. Some came back different, some
Mm-hmm.
were gone forever. New ones came that, of course, were better, but I didn't know that at the time. But I just, right now, I'm sort of on the precipice of the next, what is the next? And a part of me is like, oh no, this is going to be painful. Like, I know there's
Yeah,
going to be loss of things, or
yeah,
things that were comfortable will become uncomfortable. Certain friend groups become different. And it's not because they're bad and you're good. It's just that you've outgrown them, or you've changed. And so what once fit doesn't fit anymore. It's not, you don't have to make them bad to also know that you no longer belong there, right? It
yeah,
doesn't, you can just say, it's just not what I need anymore.
yeah,
It served me for a season, but it is a real part. It's a real thing.
yeah.
There's grief and loss, and you will disrupt your life when you grow.
No,
You will
for
disrupt.
sure. In
Mm.
so many ways, in so many
Yeah.
ways.
I
What
always
it,
say the work I do when I send that binder to someone, it should have a warning label on it that just says, like, warning, this may totally disrupt your life. I don't know. I never know how, but everything in opposition to your expansion will flare up when you start doing the kind of work that I do. You will instantly know what is in opposition to your growth and your expansion. You will know. It becomes so glaringly obvious.
yeah,
Whether it's a whether it's a boss, whether it's a relationship, it's a friend group, whether it's a career you've outgrown, whether it's a family system that needs to change. You know what I mean? You
yeah,
will know. You will be
yeah.
like, whoa.
It
Yeah.
feels like unalignment the moment
Yeah.
you're in this space and you recognize that, oh, I don't mean that anymore. I don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah.
There was something that you said that triggered what my mom has always told me. She remembered
Mhm.
when she was young, really young, and life was just really good in that moment. And she really enjoyed whatever was happening at the time. And just to kind of experience shortly after that, life was changing. And then it was changing again, moving new houses and separations within families and certain things that happens that just leads to this full understanding of life is ever changing. And she had this realization that dawned on her at a really young age that life is always going to be fleeting and things are always going to be changing. And I have to accept that, because the more I'm trying to hold on to what was or what is familiar to me or what is comfortable to me, I stay stuck in a narrative that's no longer true. And I
Mm,
found that to be so profound in going through life that when I am expecting things to change and not being so incredibly scared of it, because in the moments when I've been the most in pain and the moments where my heart has been like, broken, I've been scared. That's what I've kept saying. It's like, but I'm scared. I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen. And I'm afraid. I'm afraid because of the unknown. Or, yeah, it's that fear. It's that feeling of being scared. And I think that's the relationship a lot of people have with change. And that's
yeah.
why it's easier to stay put because easier to stay put. I
Yeah.
have to put that in like
Yeah. It's
quotations because is it?
more, that's
Yeah.
true. That's a really good point.
Yeah, because it's like it's hard to change, but it's also going to be hard where you're at. And I remember for me, maybe for you, maybe it was more career. For me, it's been love. I mean, granted that my whole podcast platform is essentially about attachment theory and understanding yourself in relationship with love. And it's because the biggest pain point for me has been attachment to men and how I have struggled in love and in relationships. And I would stay so long in relationships that although they were great, it wasn't that it was terrible or toxic or awful or just the worst. It just wasn't everything I wanted. I knew I wanted more and I had to accept less essentially. And for so many years, I accepted less for the against the discomfort of being alone or having to go through another breakup, even if it meant getting everything I ever wanted. Which, of course, now when I am in that, I'm like, thank goodness I broke out of it because wow, I would not have exchanged
Yeah.
what I have today for staying stuck in where I was. Although it was good in so many ways, it wasn't deeply fulfilling and it didn't bring out the best in me.
Yep. Yeah. So
Yeah.
good.
So it's
I
something to
love
say that
that.
easy. It's
I
not
love
easy.
that
None of it
wisdom
is.
from your mom. It's so good. It's
Yeah.
just so true. So true.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to talk about, Amy?
The only last thing I would say to anyone listening is never apologize or feel guilty for investing time, money, energy, in growing you.
Mm.
And if an opportunity shows up in front of you to take a course, to read a book, to listen to a podcast, to hire someone to hold space for you, to call the therapist, to whatever it is, that investment has the best return of any investment ever made. It's just unparalleled. And I never want people to apologize or need to justify or explain the decision to do that. Take a chance on you, is what I would say.
Oh, thank you. Take a chance on you because I see you. I love that.
So good.
Well, Amy, where can people find you if they want to learn more about what it is that you do? And also, I will, of course, make sure to include the link to take the assessment that you have in the description. But where can people find you?
Yeah. Easiest place, amykemp.com. So my name is amykemp.com. You can take the habit finder there. You can find information about my book. My book you can find anywhere where you purchase books, but it's also on Audible. Sometimes people
Nice.
ask, it's my voice recording it. So if you're a listener, you can find it there also.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're sharing your voice and wisdom with my audience. I'm really
Thank you,
grateful.
Maggie. Appreciate you.